Alright, so let's talk a little bit about Macross. I know this franchise as Robotech. That's what it was shown as back in where I grew up in the States. But it's called Macross, that's the universe. And basically, in this universe, humans run into an alien race where the humanoids are 5 times larger than a regular human being. So they created these robots in anticipation of fighting them. So these robots are smaller than Gundams. It says here it's like 12, 13 meters in height. Gundams are like 18, 20 meters. So Gundams are much bigger. Okay, so that's the deal here. But the key thing is these things have 3 modes. They can be a battle robot, but they can be a Gerwalk, which is kind of a half jet, half humanoid, and then just a full-on jet. So it's a variable fighter, and that's what makes them cool. I remember having a toy of one of these things, actually a blue one. The blue one is this person, I think Max Genius is the name, and that's what I went for here, although the model kit isn't really matching that livery so much. But alright, so let's see. Just look in the box art here. This is some sort of limited edition. I don't know why. I don't think it is. This is old originally. This thing came out originally in the early 80s. I don't know when this revision or the reprint was done, but so you gotta take that with keep that into consideration as to why the thing looks the way it does. Polystyrene. Alright, so that's the box art. And just looking at the instructions, it was actually pretty easy to put together, but one issue is the wings. If you put the decal on, you're gonna scratch the decal. So I put the whole thing together first, and then realized it might make sense to put the decal on the wing, clear coat it, and then build the model, because it's basically white. It does come with 2 heads if you want to do the VF-1J, but I went with the 1A myself. And decals to paint the helmet and stuff like that, which is nice. It's nice that it has a pilot in itself. And so this is your standard livery of the VF-1A. The VF-1J is actually quite simpler. I chose to skip it because I've seen there's a 2 set of the blue and red one of the 1Js, so I'll probably do that one later if I could ever pick it up for a decent price. So here's the other head, and then that belongs with a different kit. Never mind. Alright, so let's take a look at this model now. It's really small, being an eggplane. I can't say it really looks like an egg though, it's just super deformed. What the wings totally widened out is like 10 centimeters or 4 inches. So here's the sketchy part. I did clear coat it, but I'm gonna literally flex this wing down because they didn't really design any sort of gap here. Right? If they were smarter, they would have designed this to be taller. A little bit taller, like 1/2 millimeter, just so it doesn't scrape that wing. So I'm going to flex it downwards and move it in. Same with the other side. I don't think, they're not linked together. So it's basically like an F-14 Tomcat. At the time of Macross, that's one of the coolest planes that was existing at the time, and still is one of the coolest planes. Alright, so now as you can see it's clearly quite thin, and so now this thing is around 6.5 centimeters, maybe like 2 3/4 of an inch. Alright, so not too much on the bottom. You can remove this pistol or space rifle, but you know the thing doesn't transform into a battle robot, so it's only meant to be in flight mode. But yeah, if you want to take that out. This decal doesn't state it belonged there at all, but I'm never going to remember this stuff, so I put it there anyway so I can remember it's a 1A and not a J. You could actually have it so it's flight mode only, but I decided to go with the landing gear because you could, I don't know, no particular reason. I did sand off the bump that was here, and I crazy glued my own jewel bead. I think it just looks better. I also sanded down this nub, and then sanded that down a little bit and have jewel beads for the blue side, which is indicated by this marker, and the red side. Otherwise you just have to paint. There's no decals for those markers. Only these 2 bottom landing gear markers are decals. So you can either add paint, which I know wouldn't color match, or I think the jewel bead works a lot better. It just catches the light, you know. Okay, let's see here. There was nothing yet to go in here. This is just plain white plastic, totally smooth, so I had to go hand brush some black in there. Same back here, I had some black and some gray around it. It's nice that the cockpit, it's nice and big. It's nice as a pilot. It had no decal for instruments, so these decals inside are all just a mix of old decals from other model kits that I've built, so I think it works. It would have been nice if they just had a decal, though, for the instruments, because it's such a big cockpit. And then putting on the decals on the helmet was actually pretty easy, but you have to have some softener, decal softener. I prefer Mark Fit by Tamiya, the super strong version. It works really well. I did clear coat over this thing, and I did hand paint this cockpit, I believe. Or I think originally maybe I used liquid mask, but it doesn't work well, so I ended up hand painting over it. This is a little bit of a tough one here. This is the 3-part decal, one for the bump and one for each side. So I put the middle one on first. You gotta use decal softener a whole bunch of times, and there's the little vents right here, but they're not deep, so I almost think they should even just skip the vents entirely. There's even a little air pocket there from yeah, I did add a decal softener like 20 times on that. And then for some reason, this doesn't match the thickness. There's a little bit of a dog leg there in the blue, because this blue and black aren't the same width as what's going on here. It did come with a lot of extra decals actually. You could go with the red livery, where the pilot's helmet, this, and the wingtips are all red, and also here. But I went with blue because I already have the strike version that's going to be shown later on. That's all red. But I think you could also do the green version. I forget the pilot's name of that one though. Okay, yeah. After I applied the decals on the raw plastic, I used some Vallejo clear coat because that's what the colors are. And then after that was done, I rattle canned it with matte clear coat because Vallejo clear coat, the matte just isn't very matte. I added some gunmetal into the thrusters, and then some AK Interactive engine paint wash. And then these are 3D printed parts. This is where the hands are supposed to come out of the arms when it transforms. But they're just flat recesses and looked really weird, so I just 3D printed some vent details. Although there really should be knuckles or something, fingertips in there. But that would look even weirder, I think. So I'm just imagining this as just a sci-fi airplane and not a transforming robot. Okay, what else? Yeah, there's a lot of decals. It took several hours for me to decal this because there's probably 50 decals all over this thing. Alright, so yeah, there's 2 sides of this wing. Yeah, have to use decal softener again. And amazingly, this one black stripe here is one piece. And amazingly, it laid on okay. I was really shocked. Also this, you have to use softener to get rid of the wrinkles to get this black decal here to lay nicely. Okay, yeah, so if you just take your time, pleasantly the decals aren't super thin, they don't fold over themselves, they don't tear very easily except for possibly here if you don't put it on the wing before you assemble it. And then also these little, I don't know what these are, thrusters, or they look like, things you would twist. They are molded, so you could paint them, but you'd never get this tiny black line. So I put the decals on and then softener. But there's literally a ridge in here, and if you don't align it, like here, properly, it's going to look a little off. But it's a cartoon plane, so I guess it's fine. So for comparison, here's a Top Gun Chen F-14. It's huge. The Hasegawas run small, which actually I like because you can collect more of them. But at the same time, I like the Top Gun Chen because they have the posable pilots, the magnetic heads, and there's a bunch of magnetic arm missiles and pods and stuff. But I am going to get the Hasegawa of the F-14, and that'll probably be closer to that size. Alright, so here's a Hasegawa space shuttle. That's the only other thing related to this thing. And so this does definitely look like an egg that happens to be a space shuttle. This one I went with the Columbia livery. I 3D printed my own base for it. I like how you have this little wire and the astronaut floating out there. I gotta add some engine wash in there. Okay, so that's it for comparisons. I don't know who made this wallpaper, but it looks awesome. Anywho, this is definitely a deformed version of that type of plane, which was basically a space F-14. It's pretty sweet. So I do like these Hasegawa egg things. I actually prefer this over their normal egg planes, although that space shuttle is pretty cool. It's just like, it looks like a deformed plane instead of an egg with wings attached to it. So I prefer this. And so I'm going to build the strike version of this. I've actually already built it. It's just that I'll put up the video later. Alright, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time around.